because wildfire is kind of that's the big bill right now that's being held up. I think transportation, we're just waiting to see.
Yeah, I was just trying to pull a good article.
I mean, we could do bill limits, but I don't know if
I feel like we covered it. There's not a lot of progress.
Yeah, okay. I didn't think so either.
Okay. Both the mics are working, so we're good to go whenever.
Wow, so quick. I mean, coming in cold, Reagan. I mean, I don't know how I can do this. I need like a little warm up or something. I mean, should we do some push-ups or something like that?
You want to do some?
Can you do push-ups?
Warm-ups for a podcast would be like, I don't know, doing like Trump imitations or something.
I'm so not good at Trump. I'm the worst imitation guy on the planet.
Oh, you know what we never talked about? Lori Chavez de Reimer.
Oh,
did you remember seeing that clip?
That's right. Yeah, you played that for
Trump. I'll play it. I'll put it in the podcast. I'll edit it in. But Trump is having his cabinet meeting, and he's talking about his cabinet people, and he's just listing the names. And I don't remember. I've only seen the little clips. He's just listing the name, but he says her name:
Linda McMahon, Doug Collins, Doug Burgum, Lori Chavez de Reimer. You're doing a very good job, Lori. You know, considering she's a Democrat, you know.
And then he says, "You're doing a very good job, Lori, considering you're a Democrat." And everybody
just
laughs. Yeah. And then he talks about, and he kind of turns it into a compliment. After he does the bash, he turns it into a compliment. And he's like,
the unions say she's really good. I did it. You know, I took a lot of heat for doing it. And then they were all saying what a great job we did. Now everybody's happy with you. Great job. Thank you.
I got a lot of heat, but everybody says you're doing a good job. Alluding to the fact that the business side of people were worried about her being too pro-union, and they're fine with her. And then also the unions are happy because they have someone who will actually listen to them instead of just being 100% anti-union, which is kind of the job. I mean, you are supposed to, you think about the committee, Business and Labor, which we only have in the Senate. We don't have that in the House anymore.
Yeah,
we have all kinds of hideous committees in that subject area. But here, you're supposed to listen to labor and business and then sort of make some decisions, right? And that's what he was saying. But still so dang funny because all the Republicans who are like, she's kind of more on the moderate side, they think it's funny. The Democrats probably don't think it's funny because they think she's a right-wing Republican, or they try to make her a right-wing Republican. But
you know what I love about like when Trump does, I was even watching a little press conference this morning and stuff with him and with his cabinet and stuff. And I think what we missed with the Biden years was just a little bit of that levity, right? Like it's kind of, because we do that here in the Capitol, you sit and you go and have another meeting on another meeting, right? Like who cares what the topic is? But sometimes it's fun when I know I'm going into a meeting with like Senator Lieber, I know I'm going to have a good time. I may hate what she says, but I'm going to laugh a little, right? So it's kind of fun. Like it adds a little bit of humor. It's okay that we're doing, tough work and tough discussions on, philosophical policy differences, but have a little bit of fun. And I think Trump is enjoying the job, especially this time around. I really think he's enjoying the job. And that kind of seems to shine through when he does those little ad hoc little press conferences. Yeah, it's kind of good. What do you think? So do you think that's kind of one of our topics is what do you think Trump is going to do? Like, what do you think that effect on Trump is on Oregon campaigns? Apparently they think a lot because they're doing healthcare is doing a whole thing on the Trump the Medicaid stuff in the bill. So they're discussing all the cuts in it, which I think is kind of funny.
Is that a committee meeting?
Yeah, today at 3 o'clock. Yeah, June 3rd, 3 o'clock. So that should be kind of interesting to watch that. And then of course Rayfield sues Trump every time he turns around. I think as Trump leaves his tea in the tea box, I think Rayfield's going to sue him over littering or something. I believe that's coming soon if AG Rayfield gets on the stick. I mean, so they clearly must think that just being completely anti-Trump on every, in half our floor speeches, remonstrances from Democrats or anti-Trump stuff. So I wonder how that plays out in campaigns. What's your thought on that as it stands today?
Well, I mean, right now they basically have to bank on this being an anti-Trump midterm because in 2018, I don't remember how many seats. I'm going to look this up, but what the House and the Senate were. Oregon House elections.
They lost 4, I think, in 2018. Yeah. The House did.
So
Senate lost 1 or 2.
And that is, they have to bank on that being the result. They want that to be the result. They're trying to recreate that 2018. Democrats all over are, because they retook the House, right, at the federal level. So they want and need this to be 2018. The part of it is I'm not confident that they'll be able to get there. I mean, the data shows that most of the time the midterm for your second-term president is very, very bad midterm. It's one of the worst midterms there is. But Trump had a break in between his 2 terms, which I think probably makes it potentially a little bit different. But you still have to kind of assume it's a more Democrat-leaning year, at least for now.
Like Obama 2014, really bad for Democrats, right? Of course, in Oregon, House Republicans did nothing. They picked up nothing, which was horrible. So that was a bad midterm. Should have been a great midterm for us. Should have been a huge wave in Oregon. Wasn't. Okay, sorry, I digress.
And that's the story, is Oregon Republicans are very often not good at capitalizing on the opportunities. I mean, I think our biggest pickup cycle in recent history was 2022, and that took everybody working together, took, Greg Walden with Phil Knight's bank account, right? And all that went into that, and a lot of other fundraising that happened there. But,
What about me? I'm just kidding.
I was talking about the coordination, Brian. Okay. You're the coordination. You were a huge part of that effort. And
a little wave helps.
And a little wave helps.
You have to capitalize. I mean, that's exactly what you said was right, is capitalizing on opportunity. And I think that's, but it's so different, like, because you had this weird, because normally you're 6 years of the same president, and everybody's like, all right, I'm tired of hearing that guy.
Exactly.
Right. So that's why you get those second term midterms that are usually pretty bad. But like you said with Trump,
he's fresh again.
That, or is it 10 years at Trump? I mean,
nice.
But he won, and I'm with you. Like, I don't know the answer to it. There was an article I was reading, on good authority that it's the name of the publication. We can put the link in the show notes, but they were talking about how they kind of feel the same thing. Like, technically, Congress should go back to the Democrats.
Right.
If you were going to do all of this, the normal math and all the things, and Oregon probably has a 2018 cycle is what they say, technically speaking, but it's so unpredictable because we really we don't know what the heck things are going to look like in a year from now. No. I think that the difference is if we're in a recession or not.
Yes.
I mean, if all of a sudden Trump's stuff that he's doing now turns into an awesome summer next year and things are humming and we're in a humdinger, then we could be on a complete cultural shift cycle where where the midterms don't matter, and we're in a cultural shift where the West Coast finally catches up with Michigan and Wisconsin and all these other places, and we go to the right. So, of course, that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if any of our policies locally will affect that. I don't see anything in this session that is game-changing policies that are gonna, dramatically shift that left or right for us. So I think it's really, how do we, block and tackle, do the stuff, and then basically diminish the Trump negative effect in Oregon. And I think it's clear we have one.
It's also possible that positive results at the federal level with the economy will benefit Oregon Democrats because they're in charge, and so then they'll definitely, during the campaign cycle, will take 100% credit for it without batting an eye, and then immediately turn around and say the Trump policies are are only helping the rich, and that's how they've won as much as they did, and as much as they have, is they are not afraid at all to run on. They know how to identify the issues that matter to Oregonians, but they'll get elected and do nothing about those. And I think that's the biggest thing is you have to be able to point to, and I think that's what a Republican's job will be, is basically to point to Democrats' 2024 list of priorities during the election, and then how they accomplished none of them. They're not going to build any more housing, right? Yeah. They've fought that every step of the way. We're doing a couple of things that are decent, but they could have been way better if Democrats had not fought them, and would have built more housing. They haven't done anything on the cost of living, and I mean, really, I keep seeing how low egg prices are and continue to drop, which is just so
just
funny.
Left the whole vernacular of the news media.
Immediately drops out of the
gone.
news. It's no longer relevant because Trump is dropping the prices there, right? Fuel prices here are still higher though, and there's still a lot of cost of living that's just way higher. And so they haven't solved the cost of living. They haven't solved housing. They haven't solved homelessness. They're trying to create, hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to keep our current homelessness infrastructure running. And then did you see this in the Oregonian? There was this opinion. I'll send it to you. But basically, Libra Ford, who from Clackamas, wrote an op-ed. I kid you not. She's the head of a nonprofit, and she wrote an op-ed that says we don't need any more nonprofits. So because of the federal cuts, because of the current budget environment, all the nonprofits out there that are trying to stay afloat are feeling the squeeze, and they don't want more nonprofits to cut into their revenue streams, right?
Yeah.
Which is just really, it's mostly just government funding. So you're in this situation where they're just trying to keep everything that they have stand pat. They're not trying to expand very much of anything. You see that in our budgets for the most part, not a lot of expansion, except for a few like key priorities, but nothing like big. And then they're just going to stand pat and not really change anything. And so we have this budget that isn't going to change much because we don't have a lot of quote unquote new revenue to do big stuff. Well, that goes right into their priorities. They're not addressing any of the big things they ran on. Mm-hmm. Education's another one. They're going to do the education accountability bill maybe, but that's going to take a while to take effect.
What are they pushing? $11 billion for education, something like that?
11.4 billion. Brian,
$3 billion less than what I think they wanted for the
the quality education model that you're talking about. That never gets funded. I mean, that's my favorite thing. Is it's like this is the magic number that would fix all of education, and never once have Democrats gone, let's try that, which cracks me up. But the other thing too is it's the most funding we've ever had for education in history, Brian.
Right?
I mean, that's just legendary how we do this every single session. Anyway,
and Portland Public Schools takes 25% right off the top.
Well, the other thing too is they're doing a lot of this recalculating of the current service level for education funding. Guess what they assumed for the first year of salaries? So here's the last one. The last budget, which is why we were in so many problems with all these strikes, is they assumed 2.5% raises the first year and 2.5% raises the second year, 2.5% COLAs. Of course, state employees were getting 6.5% and 6.5% in that same time period.
Hence strikes.
Yes, and apparently that's because they do a 20-year look back on salaries. So that holds that number down. Well, all these unions don't like the 2.5 number, so they strike to get bigger numbers, and then it put all these budgets where they're having to shockingly cut teachers, which is hilarious. Guess what they assumed?
Not administration
this time.
8.5.
And 2.5. So 10% over the 2 years.
Now,
I think a lot of that is priced in catching up because these are 3-year contracts. So we went through the first 2 years and they're way behind. And so they're going to get some of that back, but they're still not getting all of it.
That's a good call.
But
I haven't looked at that budget yet. I need to dive into it. I think what Republicans should put out our quality education model.
Well, and we've done that before. We've tried to fund QEM, or we've tried to do $1 billion more than they have. We've tried to do $2 billion more. And the problem is that usually it's like the leader and like one other person, because a lot of other people are afraid to go that far because they want to attack education and teachers and stuff like that. You got to attack the union leadership. You definitely have to attack the bloat in middle management. But people like their teachers. A lot of them like their individual teachers.
Not in Portland.
And so when you go after, well, even in Portland, I think you'll have parents that say, yeah, I hate that the Portland Association of Teachers is anti-Semitic and hates the Jews. I hate that our school board is incompetent, but I like Mrs. So-and-so teaching the one class, right? And so you have to find a way to separate those two things. You have to find a way to say, we want to help the good and I just don't think we've been very effective at it. And we haven't made a concerted effort at it because we're trying to message 10,000 things at one time instead of picking 3 things and just driving home those messages. You kind of have to, we get so little coverage and we're in the super minority. You kind of just have to pick 3 things to care about, and everything else, you fight it out behind closed doors, but like it's not going to hit the press. Pick 3 things to talk about and hammer them on. If somebody we talked about this, bully commissioner, if somebody runs for bully commissioner, the only thing they should say is that they will make housing more affordable by dealing with the prevailing wage problem and just hammer the bully commissioner on affordable housing.
She's corrupt.
Well,
I would hit on that too. I mean, I would hit on the fact that Nigel pointed that out in his Willamette Week article over and over and over again. Yep. And I have even more examples that I've, poured out to the media of basically where bully decisions have, been counterproductive to building in Oregon. I mean, so you have a bully commissioner who's literally standing in the way of housing production. And I would say is a detriment to a thriving business economy. And she's just nothing but a shill for the unions. And
she can't get accomplished a budget increase to deal with the so-called, wage theft and all this stuff. Like it's the level of, the only thing she can do is be a shill for unions on this housing and prevailing wage stuff because she can't accomplish any of her other priorities. And she hasn't reached out to business. I mean, she's probably one of the most hated bully commissioners by business in a long time. And even though the unions still run the state, losing the trust of business hurts your reputation and your ability to be effective as commissioner. So a lot of tangents, but in the final month of session, I think it's time for Republicans to pick a couple things to focus on. One of them has to be wildfire maps. But I think that there's a risk that we're going to get the wildfire maps thing wrong. And you and I have talked about this. Mm-hmm. We alluded to a little bit, but I think it's time to highlight it again. House Republicans have pulled the bill a couple of times. They get a couple of Democrat defectors, right, but never 31 to be able to actually pull it to the floor. And that's fine for messaging as long as when you're in the negotiating room, you tell them Senate Bill 83 is a bill that is good and it needs to pass. We are not going to negotiate tax increases to help it pass. We're not going to negotiate kicker stealing to help it pass. Right? There's some wildfire funding mechanisms that aren't tax increases that are being worked on. But at the end of the day, no tax hikes, no kicker stealing. You guys are free to move Senate Bill 83 whenever you're in the majority. I mean, that you have to put it back on them. They actually run the building. You have to point that out. We can't just say, "Oh, how dare they do this?" You have to tell people, Democrats run the building. They can move Senate Bill 83 any minute they choose to do it.
Like they did in the Senate. Where both sides, everybody voted for it, and it was like the way it went, and this was a dumb idea. Let's get rid of it. Let's throw it in the trash, and let's move on.
And who is leading that charge? The guy who wrote the original, I think it was 762 was the original wildfire bill 2 sessions ago, Jeff Golden. And he convinced a lot of Republicans it was a good idea and blah, blah, blah. It has gone nothing but horribly. And even the Republicans who voted for it, I think some of them pointed out there's some potential problems here. It's gone horribly ever since. We've delayed the wildfire maps once. The second set of maps is the appeals are delayed. It's gone so poorly that for Democrats that Jeff Golden is now here and brought the repeal bill halfway through the process.
Yeah. Jeff Golden. We're talking like super lib.
Now, so he's not everybody's favorite person, so maybe that's part of the reason, not just for negotiating leverage. But,
that would be interesting. Yeah.
He was running against Treasurer Steiner for a couple of weeks there in the primary. Yeah. He's big on the climate, a lot of this climate stuff going a lot farther than Democrats want to go. So I'm willing to admit he's not the most popular Democrat, but he is the king of wildfire maps. And the king of wildfire maps says, I no longer wish to be the king of wildfire maps.
Yeah, he does not want that. And I'll give him a little bit of credit. And I don't really know Jeff or Senator Golden, to be honest with you. I just know him tertiarily, right? I've never really sat down and had a conversation with him. So It's hard to say whether I like him or not. His policies are horrible. That I know for sure. Like his philosophy on policy making. And this was probably one of the worst. Next to probably the state bank, I think, is what he had.
Well, and this will be perfect now. Anytime you pitch a state bank, we're like, so is this going to be like wildfire maps or is this actually going to work?
But I wonder but good on him, I will say, by recognizing the fact that this wasn't a good idea and he's repealing it. And I think that's very rare in this building.
Very.
That people will at some point just throw their hands up and just be like, yeah, this was a dumb idea. Like, let's just get rid of it. And it's the unintended consequences just went out of control and let's just get rid of it. Right. So I say good on him for that.
Totally
and then the Senate all agreed, right? It was like, and so I wonder, Reagan, and I love your thoughts on this. You've been involved in these negotiations. Is there some chamber issues that maybe the speaker is holding the bill up because there's something she's wanting from President Wagner that she's not getting? I wonder if something, so maybe it's not a DNR thing and they're using is there something else going on there? Or do you think it's truly just we want the kicker in?
It's very, very possible. There is a bit of this at the end in the negotiations, not just R versus T, but also House versus Senate, because for whatever reason, right, those chambers sometimes have competing priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have seen the Senate be much more collegial. Wagner's out there saying it's the most bipartisan session in history, and the House has been a lot more partisan and has felt a lot more disjointed and a lot more difficult. And that was, for whatever, it's probably, House Leader Vicky Brees-Iverson, Speaker Rayfield, and Majority Leader Fahey. It was just the magic combo that made the House a magic oasis of kumbaya. And the Senate was, a big difficult place.
But I would say that there was
it was much more functional, much more regular order. They used consent agenda, which hadn't been used in years. They used the consent agenda to move some stuff that was just everybody was fine with, right? So you don't have to vote on each individual bills. You vote yes on the consent agenda, and everything in it goes, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. But they found a way to get a lot of that and some big things done. And in the Senate, it was obviously, the walkouts and it was much more dysfunctional.
Because 80%, 85%, probably more closer to 80% of the stuff that happens here, the bills go through, they're not contentious, right? Nope. So using your consent agenda, it's like, can we just get through that stuff so then we can have longer discussions about the stuff that really matters?
Exactly.
That's the point of consent agendas, is like moving the other shit through the system quicker, because who wants to sit there and listen to some weird technical fix bill for some city in somebody's district? Like, nobody cares, right? Exactly. Like, great, you're doing your job, move on.
Yep.
And I think that's really, let's get into the big stuff, because the big stuff matters. Now, the other argument to that is probably like, well, the more that we slow them down on all of the minutia, the less time they have to bring up the stuff that Republicans hate. But I think you have to not be afraid of that, right? You have to not be afraid. I'm not afraid to have a gun argument with Democrats. I'm not afraid to have that. And we need to have those arguments with them on transportation packages and all this sort of stuff that we're talking about. We need to have those debates, and they should be healthy, because I believe Republicans philosophically, like how we started, we're for smaller government, less taxes, all the things that Oregonians, I think, is, education is out of control, all those sort of things. Like, we're not going to have a robust education discussion this session, this entire time, and yet we're going to spend over $11 billion.
Which is pretty crazy. I mean, I'm assuming the Education Committee talked about this accountability bill, but it happened in one half of the chamber, because it went to Ways and Means, and that's a process problem that we brought out. The other policy committee doesn't get to hear it whatsoever, right? And then in Ways and Means, they go, well, you can't talk about the policy. It's only about the money. And it's like, so when do we get to talk about the policy?
Yeah.
Two people in Senate Education got to talk about it, and that's it, right? Like, that whole thing, and then debating it on the floor, where you're not going to make changes. It's already going to pass, because if it's coming to the floor, it's passing.
Goes the Ways and Means, and they have a little discussion in there. And then...
So anyway, fixing that would be good in terms of like the process side of things. But yeah, ultimately, we're towards the end of session. Everybody's grumpy, right? We need to find a couple of things to coalesce around and focus on those and get to the finish line of session. And I mean, there's a handful of big things out there, but at the end of the day, also, if we're not walking out, people have to know the votes are the votes. And so we stand up, we make the arguments, and then we vote. And that's the great thing about the system. That's the great thing about elections, is there's an election day, there's a sine die, and then we vote, and then it's over. And I'll put this in the show notes. I put a tweet up. Anybody who thinks we're getting out of here early is high as a kite. We haven't been getting out of here early in the last 3 sessions. 1 day early is the record. The record before that was 3 days, and that was 2017. So again, this stuff, it takes as long as we allow it to take. And so whatever date sine die is going to be pretty much when we're done. Mostly because I think also Democrats are hoping that the Senate kind of gives you an idea of what the big beautiful bill is going to look like, so they can plan their budget. So if they need to make big last minute adjustments, that's going to be the time that they have to do it. It's right there at the end of session.
I'm with you. I mean, you look at still what's in the pipeline and stuff. I mean, the chances of us getting out of here, they keep saying June 18th, June 19th, and I'm like, there's no way we're out of here until June 20. I think 26. I think they try to nail it on Thursday. I think Thursday is the 26th of June. That's my prediction.
Okay, 26th.
I think they try to knock it out sometime in the evening of June 26th. They figure it out, because what's going to happen is the House Republicans, are going to basically, your side, Reagan. I can call that your side of the House now. They're going to mess it all up for us.
Yes.
And it's going to be, and the Senate's going to be over here waiting for the House, because everything has to go through both sides. So we can't leave. We can't just leave and say, well, we're done. You guys figure out your stuff, because all of a sudden there's a concurrence bill or there's an amendment or something that's just going to mess it all up, because I really seem like that's going to be where the problem lies. And but we're not there yet. I mean, we say that now, but I mean, that pendulum can shift in a hurry. We've seen that more and more again. So
I'm going with Friday the 27th.
You think it's going to take till Friday? Huh?
Yeah, I think they'll try to avoid doing a Saturday session.